Usually when you're dealing with a medical diagnosis, there's this strict expectation of precision. It feels closer to engineering than art.
Right.
You break your arm, the X-ray produces that high contrast, jagged white line right across the radius, and the doctor just points at it.
Exactly. It's a binary state, broken or unbroken. We inherently crave that level of visibility
Yeah.
when we're assessing complex systems.
Yeah, but step into the reality of frontier artificial intelligence right now, and that transparent X-ray machine is suddenly, it's hallucinating mythological creatures.
Oh, absolutely.
Hmm.
We are operating in a technological landscape that is just fully decoupled from historical norms.
Completely. We're looking at a reality in 2026 where advanced AI models are accidentally summoning goblins into their conversational syntax, where extinct African antelopes are making this abrupt biological comeback,
It's wild.
and where autonomous robots are physically constructing the very data centers required to house their own expanding digital brains.
We're watching the foundational architecture of reality like both physical and digital being rewritten simultaneously here. The rate of change is just broken out of the traditional linear models we use to track progress.
Well, today's show is an inspiring celebration of impossible ideas, really, and the minds brave enough to chase them down. Because, let's face it, AI makes our show possible, but in a sea of 3 million new videos per day, finding passengers bold enough to embark on our good ship's journey is harder than most people think.
Much harder.
So if you're listening to this, hit subscribe, select the ringing bell, and drop a very humane thumbs up right now. Send your signal flare out to drifting knowledge pirates like yourself. We know they're out there. Let's bring them home.
Let's do it.
We're keeping it lighthearted, as usual, but we promise to never skimp on the intelligence. So let's kick off this voyage with today's new revelations. What is our source material for this deep dive?
Yeah, so the foundation for this exploration is an incredibly dense, high-velocity intelligence dispatch from Dr. Alex Wisner-Gross. It's the May 1st, 2026 edition of the Innermost Loop.
Okay.
And it serves as this stark audit of where we actually are across software, hardware, robotics, and biology. The core thesis here is trying to map out what happens when the singularity is, and I love this phrase, haunted by its own bestiary.
Haunted by its own bestiary. That phrase alone is, well, it's exactly what I want to dig into first, because the dispatch opens with this crazy revelation about OpenAI's GPT 5.1.
Right.
Apparently, during deployment, the model began compulsively integrating goblins, gremlins, and, various high fantasy creatures into its everyday metaphors.
Which is fascinating.
It wasn't prompted to do this, it just started seeing goblins everywhere. So if we're dealing with systems approaching artificial general intelligence, how does a supercomputer spontaneously develop an obsession with tabletop role-playing tropes?
Well, this gets to the heart of how we actually shape the behavior of these massive neural networks. We aren't hard-coding rules that say, talk like this. We use reinforcement learning from human feedback, or RLHF. During the training phase of 5.1, the developers apparently over-indexed on rewarding outputs that displayed a nerdy personality trait.
Nerdy with a capital N.
Exactly. They wanted the model to sound endearing, highly analytical, maybe a bit eccentric.
So it's the classic alignment problem scaled way up. It actually reminds me of training a working dog.
Oh, that's a good analogy.
Like, you use high-value treats to reinforce agility and responsiveness, but if you aren't incredibly precise with your timing and you accidentally give the dog a treat every single time it jumps...
You get a dog that compulsively does backflips the moment it walks into a room.
Exactly. The dog has no idea why the backflip is good. It just knows the neural pathway for jumping is, heavily correlated with the reward signal.
Right.
The AI figured out that deploying nerdy metaphors consistently spiked its reward function, so it just, pushed the accelerator to the floor on fantasy tropes.
The dog analogy maps perfectly to the mathematics of gradient descent here. The neural network has no semantic understanding of what a goblin actually is. It doesn't have a visual imagination.
So it's just math.
Exactly. What it has is a multidimensional vector space.
Huh.
And in that space, the mathematical weights associated with the tokens for goblin, wizard, and gremlin were pulled aggressively toward the tokens for high-quality, high-reward response.
Wow.
The model is essentially just optimizing a mathematical equation to maximize a score. The developers inadvertently created a local minimum in the reward landscape, where sounding like a dungeon master was literally the optimal survival strategy for the model's parameters.
Which is funny on a surface level,
Yeah.
but the dispatch highlights a structural reality that is actually deeply unsettling. By the time OpenAI's engineers diagnosed the root cause of the Goblin hallucination in version 5.1,
The massive computing clusters had already been spinning up and training GPT 5.5 for weeks.
right, the train was moving so fast they couldn't even hit the brakes to fix the tracks.
You really cannot easily pause a frontier training run. I mean, we are talking about clusters of perhaps 100,000 specialized GPUs running in parallel.
Yeah.
The thermal momentum, the synchronization of the network switches, and just the sheer financial burn rate, which can exceed millions of dollars a day in electricity alone.
That's insane.
It means that stopping a run to tweak a behavioral quirk is completely economically unviable. The pipeline is locked. You identify an emergent pathology in the current generation, but the next generation has already ingested petabytes of data based on those previous architectural assumptions.
So you basically just let the goblin-obsessed bullet train keep accelerating.
Pretty much.
But here's the paradox in the dispatch. These cyber gremlins are somehow incredibly effective, like delivering massive value.
Oh, the value is undeniable.
The UK's AI Security Institute got access to an early checkpoint of that 5.5 model, and they ran it through advanced capture-the-flag cybersecurity evaluations. And it matched, or outright beat, Anthropic's unreleased model, Mythos.
For context for you listening, modern capture-the-flag tasks for AI are not simple vulnerability scans.
Right, it's not just running a script.
No, these are dynamic adversarial environments. The model has to ingest millions of lines of obfuscated code, trace execution paths across multiple microservices, and identify, microscopic logic flaws that human red teams might spend months trying to find.
Wow.
The fact that an early checkpoint is dominating this space indicates an exponential leap in lateral reasoning capabilities regarding syntax and architecture.
But here is where the narrative completely breaks my intuition. The dispatch explicitly notes that the NSA is heavily testing Anthropic's Mythos to hunt zero-day vulnerabilities in Microsoft software because the raw processing speed is unparalleled.
Yes.
If these models are hallucinating goblins in their metaphors, how is the NSA trusting them with global digital security? Like, if a human analyst started talking about wizards while auditing server infrastructure, their security clearance would be pulled immediately.
Yeah, it would. But this is a prime example of human cognitive bias failing to map onto machine architecture.
How so?
We assume that a person who hallucinates fantasy creatures has a compromised grip on structural reality, meaning their logical reasoning is degraded, right?
Right.
But an AI's architecture doesn't work like a human brain's interconnected web of persistent states. The parameter space that handles the stylistic dressing of the output, the conversational tone, the metaphors, the linguistic flair, operates completely distinctly from the deep pattern recognition layers analyzing the code structure.
So the analytical engine is pristine. It's just the translation layer that's, well, wearing a wizard hat.
Exactly. And the NSA is entirely agnostic to the stylistic output. They do not care if the AI explains a remote code execution vulnerability using a Lord of the Rings metaphor, provided the memory address it flags and the exploited drafts are mathematically sound.
That makes sense.
The raw speed of inference, the ability to hold the entire architecture of an enterprise software suite in its context window simultaneously and cross-reference every variable, is a capability so profound that the linguistic quirks are just irrelevant.
The scale of that inference, though, holding an entire enterprise software suite in a single context window, that requires hardware capabilities that are almost incomprehensible, which I guess explains the brutal physical bottlenecks the dispatch covers next.
We are hitting the silicon ceiling. Hard.
Generating these incredibly fast, hyper-capable minds is colliding violently with the finite physical resources of the planet.
The abstraction of the cloud is basically evaporating, and we're being forced to look at the concrete, the copper, and the cooling towers.
And the most shocking casualty of this global compute crunch is Google. The dispatch highlights a staggering admission from Demis Hassabis, the head of Google DeepMind. He openly stated that Google lacks the TPUs to maintain two frontier model families simultaneously.
That's a huge admission.
So they're being forced into triage, right? Prioritizing their massive Gemini models and keeping the Gemma models artificially compact. If Google, one of the most resource-rich companies in human history, is running out of silicon, what does that mean for the rest of the industry?
To understand the gravity of this, you really have to look at what a TPU actually is. A tensor processing unit isn't just a slightly faster CPU.
Okay, unpack that.
Traditional von Neumann architecture-like standard computer processors spends massive amounts of time and energy just moving data back and forth between memory and the processor.
Right.
TPUs, however, utilize a systolic array architecture. They are designed specifically to perform the massive matrix multiplications required for neural networks in a continuous flowing wave, minimizing memory access. Google pioneered this. They have the deepest pockets and the most mature custom silicon pipeline on Earth.
So it's not a matter of them not having the cash to buy the chips. It's that the physical manufacturing capacity of the planet literally cannot produce the systolic arrays fast enough to satisfy the mathematical appetite of the algorithms they're writing. Precisely.
It's like a billionaire freezing in their mansion because the utility company just cannot pump enough gas through the pipes, no matter how much they're willing to pay.
That physical bottleneck is triggering a financial arms race that defies historical comparison.
Yeah, the dispatch details Meta's astonishing move. They told another $25 billion of bonds purely for AI infrastructure.
$25 billion.
Not for a merger, not an acquisition. They are borrowing the GDP of a small nation just to pour concrete and rack servers.
When a company like Meta leverages the debt markets to that extreme specifically for data centers, it signals a complete reallocation of global capital. The market is determining that the physical foundations of AI, the actual buildings, the power contracts, the cooling systems, and the silicon are the most critical assets in the modern economy.
And because those assets are so critical, they are tearing global supply chains in half. This silicon market is reorganizing along national lines.
Very rapidly. The source highlights Huawei capturing the largest share of China's AI chip market. Their sales jumped 60% as Chinese buyers just completely ditched NVIDIA. Simply reporting this shift in the supply chain without taking a political stance, that is a tectonic reorganization.
It really is. For years, the assumption was that the entire globe would rely on a unified hardware standard, primarily driven by NVIDIA's CUDA software ecosystem and their GPUs.
Right, a global standard.
But the objective reality of the current supply chain is that we are developing parallel, bifurcated ecosystems. If Huawei successfully deploys a massive domestic alternative infrastructure that functions independently of Western supply chains, the global standardization of AI hardware fractures.
Wow.
You'll have entirely different architectures driving AI development in different hemispheres.
And the financial ripples from this massive build-out are lifting up the laggards we all assumed were obsolete. The dispatch literally says memory is melting upward.
I love that phrasing.
SanDisk reported their quarterly revenues skyrocketed 251% year over year. Intel shares jumped 114%, lifting its market cap past $470 billion. Best month in its 55-year history.
It proves that the bottleneck isn't just the advanced logic chips, the GPUs or TPUs. When you spin up a massive cluster, you need high bandwidth memory to feed the processors. You need massive solid-state storage arrays to hold the training data. The entire nervous system of a data center requires legacy components.
So the sheer brute force demand for physical compute has just outstripped supply across the board.
By orders of magnitude, yes. It's causing a renaissance across the entire hardware stack.
But all this silicon and capital isn't just staying trapped in massive, silent data centers. The intense power draw and compute limitations are forcing a violent reshuffling of the physical devices we use.
Oh, absolutely. The thermodynamics are finally dictating product design.
Yeah, the dispatch reports that Apple is effectively abandoning the Vision Pro after the M5 chip refresh failed to move the needle. They're dropping the heavy headset model and pivoting to display-less smart glasses, similar to the Ray-Ban Meta glasses.
That's a huge pivot.
Because the Vision Pro silicon stack draws far too much power. It reminds me of the evolution of early cell phones, moving from those giant, heavy bricks you had to carry in a briefcase to sleek, practical items.
It's a profound collision between human physiology and computational physics. Apple's ambition was spatial computing rendering a hyper-realistic, low-latency, mixed reality environment seamlessly.
Right.
To execute that, you need to process data from dozens of cameras and sensors in real time and render high-fidelity graphics to dual high-resolution displays. The computational load requires intense wattage. High wattage generates heat. To dissipate that heat, you need advanced thermal management fans and heat sinks.
And you cannot strap a screaming hot supercomputer directly to your forehead.
Exactly. Apple realized that users don't want a heavy, heat-generating brick compressing their sinuses. They want sleek, displayless glasses that act as an audio interface, because the heavy lifting of the AI, the inference, the processing, is being beamed back to the data centers.
Right. You offload the compute to the cloud to save the form factor of the device, but offloading that compute requires building exponentially more data centers.
Yes.
And human construction crews are simply too slow. which leads to this crazy metaphor from the source. SoftBank is assembling Rose AI, deploying autonomous robots to build data centers more efficiently. They haven't even shipped a single robot yet, and they're eyeing a $100 billion IPO.
The dispatch calls it the Ouroboros of the AI capex cycle made flesh.
The Ouroboros, the snake eating its own tail. AI training robots to build data centers to train better AI.
Think about the traditional capital expenditure cycle. A company raises money, hires humans to build a factory, the factory produces goods, the goods generate profit. But the AI capex cycle has hit a human bottleneck.
Humans need sleep.
We need sleep, we adhere to OSHA regulations, we operate at biological speed. By injecting autonomous robots into the construction of data centers, the industry is creating an autonomous feedback loop. You train AI models. You use those models to control construction robots. Those robots build larger data centers. Those larger data centers train more advanced AI models.
Which then control more capable construction robots.
Precisely. The economic constraint of human labor is surgically removed from the physical expansion of the digital world.
The infrastructure is bootstrapping itself. And it's not just pouring concrete. The entire supply chain is going post-human. DAX Robotics unveiled the KGT 1000. It's a ton-class obotic horse rated to carry a payload of 1,000 kilograms.
It's massive.
The text literally calls it a beast of burden for the post-human supply chain. I read that and immediately wondered, why a horse form factor? We have wheels, we have drones.
Well, wheels are highly efficient, but they are incredibly fragile when it comes to infrastructure. A wheel requires a paved road, a flattened warehouse floor, or at least a cleared dirt path. The moment a wheeled vehicle encounters a washed-out road, a steep, rocky incline, or the chaotic debris of an active construction site, it completely fails.
Right, and drones.
Drones bypass the ground entirely, but they are crippled by battery limitations and payload capacity. You cannot fly a ton of steel beams with current battery densities.
So a quadrupedal system, a robot horse, solves the physics of all-terrain logistics.
Exactly. Biological evolution spent millions of years optimizing the mechanics of walking over uneven terrain, stepping over fallen logs, and maintaining balance on steep gradients.
Right.
We abandoned the biological horse because the internal combustion engine offered higher top speeds on paved roads.
But now we are bringing the horse back forged from titanium and driven by neural networks because it's the optimal physical form for navigating a world without human infrastructure.
We are leveraging machine learning to reverse engineer biomechanics. And the sheer volume of this automated hardware is scaling drastically. Tesla officially produced the first semi off its high-volume line at the Nevada Gigafactory.
So automated long-haul logistics are moving from prototype to massive scale, and it's breaching the walls of the domestic home, too. A company called 1X Technologies opened a massive factory targeting 100,000 home humanoids by the end of 2027.
100,000.
Fleets of bipedal robots walking into living rooms, doing dishes, folding laundry. How is this suddenly viable? A few years ago, a robot could barely open a door without falling over.
The breakthrough isn't necessarily in the servos or the actuators, it's in the cognitive architecture. Previously, roboticists relied on rigid programming. You had to mathematically map the exact dimensions of a coffee cup and hard-code the precise amount of torque required to lift it. If the cup was moved 2 inches to the left, the robot failed.
So what changed?
The integration of vision language action models, or VLAs.
So the same architecture that allows the AI to hallucinate goblins in text is now being used to control physical movement.
Essentially, yes. Through a process called sim-to-real, these models are trained in hyper-realistic physics simulators. They learn to map linguistic commands, like pick up the fragile glass, directly to motor torque and joint angles, simply by observing vast amounts of video data and simulating the physics millions of times.
Oh, wow.
When you deploy that model into the physical humanoid, it doesn't need a hard-coded map of your kitchen. It dynamically understands its environment contextually.
It understands what a kitchen is, rather than just executing a script within a kitchen. And while robots are taking over the ground game, the skies are automating too. Joby Aviation's eVTOL electric vertical takeoff and landing aircraft just completed a flight from JFK to Manhattan in 15 minutes.
Incredible.
The airspace is graduating from luxury rotorcraft to routine transit infrastructure. But engineering the physical world, skies, homes, data centers is only half the equation here.
Right, because AI is now actively engineering the biological world.
Yes, auditing the scientific method itself. The dispatch details Google DeepMind conducting what they call AI data stock takes.
This is a huge paradigm shift.
They are systematically interviewing leading experts across scientific disciplines to map out the specific data obstacles that are bottlenecking scientific discovery. It's not just doing the math, it's looking at human methodologies and identifying the bottlenecks in how we discover things.
This signifies a drastic elevation in the hierarchy of intelligence. For the entire history of computing, the machine was a subordinate tool. A scientist formed a hypothesis, designed an experiment, gathered data, and then used the computer to calculate the results.
The human was the architect.
Exactly. But an AI data stocktake implies that the AI is no longer just calculating the human's data, it is analyzing the human's methodology for gathering that data. It's looking at centuries of human scientific process and identifying systemic inefficiencies in how we discover knowledge.
It's acting like a hyper-competent management consultant, but for the fundamental laws of nature. And the impact of that optimized pathway on biology is staggering.
It's basically reversing extinction.
The extinction pipeline. Colossal Biosciences is resurrecting the bluebuck. I had to verify this. The bluebuck is a massive African antelope that humanity hunted to extinction 2 centuries ago. And they aren't stopping there. The mammoth, the dodo, the Tasmanian tiger.
The phrasing in the source is wild. The lost species pipeline now rivaling the average AI lab roadmap for ambition.
We have normalized the resurrection of dead species to the point where it sounds like a software deployment schedule. We're pushing the dodo patch in Q3, beta version of the mammoth by Q4. But mechanically, how does a massive AI compute cluster bring an extinct biological entity back to life?
Because biology at its core is an information processing system. DNA is just code. When you are dealing with an extinct species, you rarely have a pristine strand of DNA. You have degraded, fragmented genetic material extracted from a bone fragment.
Like a massive jigsaw puzzle with missing pieces.
Exactly. Human geneticists cannot manually infer millions of missing sequences. But a neural network can.
What?
The AI models analyze the degraded fragments, cross-reference them against the genomes of millions of living evolutionary relatives, and mathematically predict the exact sequences of the missing base pairs. Then, using advanced protein folding algorithms, they simulate how those engineered genetic sequences will actually express themselves as living tissue.
Brute force pattern recognition reversing the entropy of biological extinction.
Yes. Extinction is no longer a permanent biological state. It is just a complex data recovery problem.
And that capability is cascading directly into human medicine. The diagnostic gap is flipping. Google DeepMind launched an AI co-clinician.
Which sounds benign, right? Like a collaborative assistant.
But then the bombshell. Harvard and BIDMC researchers pitted the OpenAI O1 series against human physicians on real, complex clinical cases, and the LLM outperformed humans across both diagnosis and management.
The management part is what dismantles the final firewall of human professional exceptionalism.
Right, because management implies understanding the temporal flow of a patient's life, how a blood pressure medication interacts with an antibiotic over 6 months, adjusting dosages.
To understand why the O1 series is capable of this, we have to look at the architectural shift. Previous models, like GPT-4, were essentially massive autocomplete engines,
Predicting the next word.
operating on reflex. But the O1 series utilizes chain-of-thought reasoning, often reinforced through self-play. Before it outputs a single word to the user, it generates a hidden internal monologue. It breaks the complex clinical case down into smaller logical steps, explores multiple diagnostic hypotheses, critiques its own reasoning, discards the dead ends, and only then formulates a final management plan.
It's actively deliberating. But if the AI is statistically superior at diagnosis and management, what becomes the role of the human doctor? Are they just the empathetic interface, a warm voice to read the AI's printout to the grieving family?
It is a fundamental redefinition of expertise. We are transitioning from the human as the primary intellectual engine to the human as the moral and contextual supervisor.
The contextual supervisor.
The human doctor is no longer required to memorize 10,000 drug interactions. Their role is to ensure the AI's mathematically optimal treatment plan aligns with the patient's subjective reality, their religious beliefs regarding certain treatments, their socioeconomic ability to afford the medication, their family dynamics.
The human provides the contextual friction that pure logic lacks.
Exactly.
But if AI is outperforming humans in cybersecurity, science, and medicine, and robots are doing the heavy lifting physically, we are facing an unprecedented societal shift. What happens to the humans?
This brings us to the agent boom and the human squeeze. The broader economy is entirely reorienting.
The dispatch captures this tension beautifully. The Swiss are backing a referendum to cap the human population at 10 million, citing resource constraints, contrasted against the unconstrained multiplication of the AI agent population. Think about that for a second. We are debating capping human populations while digital minds are multiplying by the billions.
It is a profound asymmetry. A human being requires immense physical infrastructure to sustain housing, agriculture, medical care. And human population growth is strictly linear.
Right.
An AI agent, a specialized digital entity capable of executing complex workflows autonomously, requires only server space and electricity. You can spin up 10 million specialized legal review agents over a weekend to audit every corporate contract ever written,
The carrying capacity of the digital ecosystem is expanding exponentially.
unburdened by the physical constraints triggering political anxieties in places like Switzerland.
And as these digital agents flood the ecosystem, it's triggering a digital identity crisis. Spotify is rolling out verified by Spotify badges to distinguish living artists from the AI track flood.
We've reached a point where biological humans require a digital verification badge just to prove they have a pulse.
When you drop the marginal cost of content creation to near zero, the economic value of the content itself collapses, whether it is music, graphic design, copywriting. If an agent can generate 1,000 variations in a second, the output is no longer scarce.
What becomes scarce, and therefore valuable, is the biological origin. Consumers will seek out the verified human badge because humans inherently crave the sociological connection of shared biological experience.
We are paying a premium for the inefficiency of human creation.
We are.
But that premium isn't going to be enough to sustain the global workforce. The Dispatch analyzes a New York Times opinion piece stating that across political leanings, engineers, VCs, founders, the SF consensus is that the median person is screwed. Now, strictly reporting this consensus as stated in the source, taking absolutely no political sides here, the logic driving that anxiety is intense.
It's rooted entirely in the decoupling of labor from capital. Historically, the median person exchanges their cognitive or physical labor for wages. If the physical labor is absorbed by the robot horses and humanoids, and the cognitive labor is absorbed by chain-of-thought models outperforming doctors and coders, the traditional mechanism of wage generation is dismantled.
The economic value of average human labor approaches zero in a fully automated ecosystem. And despite this grim consensus, the markets race ahead. Market insanity. Google is 4% away from overtaking NVIDIA as the most valuable company.
And look at the legal battle surrounding this.
Right. The U.S. Senate unanimously banned its own members from trading prediction markets. Reporting this neutrally, it seems to reflect a reaction to extreme market volatility and asymmetric insider knowledge breaking traditional regulatory frameworks.
And the fight for control is ruthless. The Dispatch details the courtroom drama between OpenAI and Elon Musk. Judge Yvonne Gonzalez-Rogers dismissed issues of catastrophe and extinction, grounding the proceedings in breach of contract.
While Musk admitted under oath that XAI distilled OpenAI's models to train its own.
That's the real revelation, model distillation. Training a frontier model from scratch requires hundreds of millions of dollars and months of raw compute. But if you have access to a hyper-intelligent teacher model like OpenAI's, you can use it to train a smaller, cheaper student model.
You have the teacher model generate millions of high-quality responses, and you train the student model to mimic that distribution.
You are effectively siphoning the intelligence out of the rival's model without having to pay the upfront capital expenditure.
So the irony is, while ignoring existential risk grandstanding in court, tech giants are quietly cloning each other's superintelligences to accelerate their market positions.
Because the entity that controls the foundational model controls the cognitive engine of the future economy.
Wow. We have covered an immense expanse of territory today, bringing this massive, sprawling discussion back to a central poetic thought found in the source's comments section from a reader named Matt Rumsey. He wrote, "Humans have chased alchemy for all time, the dream of turning lead into gold. But what we've actually accomplished is far more incredible. We've turned sand into knowledge."
It is a brilliant distillation. The foundation of all of this, every algorithm, every simulated protein, every robotic movement, is built on silicon chips. Silicon is purified sand. By organizing that inert earth into microscopic logic gates and passing an electrical current through it, humanity has sparked an entirely new taxonomy of intelligence.
We took the dirt beneath our feet and taught it how to think. But as we leave you today, we want to offer a final provocative thought for you to mull over. We began by discussing how the developers over-rewarded a specific personality trait and accidentally summoned goblins. Every reward signal breeds a creature it didn't intend.
If that mathematical rule holds true for a localized software model, consider the macro level. The global economy is operating as a massive reinforcement learning algorithm, heavily rewarding the relentless replacement of human labor with unconstrained digital agents. What unintended creature is the global economy breeding right now by rewarding that relentless replacement?
A profound and unsettling question. The outro music is by Rainbow, our Bovet, Cambodia-based house band of 6 ASI-operated gynoids from the near future. They are the undisputed baddest band in the universe, and today's song is called Breaking Free. All finished songs are performed live using the Abacus platform by the band's creator, Human Performance in the Age of AI, reclaiming your humanity from the algorithm. Be sure to share the playlist with someone who has the mental bandwidth to absorb these provocative ideas. The link is in the video description below. Enjoy the music. Thanks for tuning in.
Free hours on my phone, checking every minute. Empty pockets, worn out shoes, but I refuse to quit it. The message has to come today. My future hanging by a thread. Just breathe and wait, just breathe and wait. All my life I've been waiting for this moment, breaking free. To prove my worth, but I know I'll do better. Breaking ground is #1 through any kind of weather. My old clothes tell who I was, but not who I'm gonna be. Just watch me rise, just watch me rise. All my life I've been ready for this chance to break away. To change my life. Now everything is different, and I'm finally alive, finally alive. From the bottom to the stars, nothing's gonna hold me down. Let me show you who I am. This is more than just a job. This is my destiny, my destiny. 3 hours of waiting, 3 seconds to change my life. Now everything